So what's up, Neil? How you doing, man?
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice to have you on, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Been a super big fan of A Day to Remember pretty much my whole like adult life. I've been listening to you guys since freaking high school, man. So it's quite an honor to have you on.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, so I just we're coming at you guys live from here in Central Florida. You guys are obviously from Florida. You've written about in many songs in Florida, city of Ocala, All Signs Point to Lauderdale. So, are you all from Central Florida or Florida in general?
Yeah, we all grew up in Ocala, except for our new guitar player. Well, he's not new. He's been in the band for 10 years, but except for our other guitar player, Kevin, he's from Minnesota, but he even lived here for 5 years. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Right on. Well, dude, I wanted to have you on because one, you're in one of my favorite bands. Two, you have been, you've been eating a plant-based diet for a few years, and then three, you're a cyclist. So I feel like this would be so awesome to have you on. Good conversation. Yeah. So I mean, I just want to ask you, are you like I've read stuff online, of people saying that you're eating plant-based or vegan. Could you share your thoughts on that and how that's been?
Yeah. So when I first met my wife, the story kind of begins with that. She was on tour with Blink. She was Travis Barker's chef, and we were opening for them. And I thought she was like beautiful, and I wanted to talk to her. And so I was like, "Hey, will you teach me how to cook?" And she's like, only if you're vegan. And I'm like, "Oh no, I can't do that," And she's like, "No, you can. It's not that hard." And I was like, "All right." And so she basically was like, "Look, I'll teach you how to cook. If you're vegan, there's 2 more weeks of the tour." I'm like, this will be a great reason for me to get to go and talk to her and kind of get to know her as well. And I'm like, all right, let's do it, And so for 2 weeks, I did it and kind of felt amazing. Like at the time, I was kind of doing a lot of CrossFit stuff, and I just felt amazing. I hadn't felt like that in a long time, and so I continued to do it after that. And we kind of decided we were going to start dating, and maybe like 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 months later, I invited her to come here, and she came here. She was living out in LA.
Okay.
And so I went out there for a little bit, and then she came here, and then we kind of talked about like if we were gonna really do the thing, then I'd have to either move to LA or she would move here. And so we kind of did a pros and cons list and kind of did the thing, and she ended up moving in with me. And so I was just, for that whole 2 year period, I was full vegan. I ate all plant-based stuff, and it was awesome. And then towards the end, like I kind of was, I guess, not getting the right nutrients I was supposed to be getting, and it wasn't anyone's fault but mine, because I just kept wanting to eat like a lot of those meat alternatives. And I just, when I would go on tour, like I wouldn't be able to like, a lot of times vegan restaurants would close early or whatever whenever we were in Europe or we were like out in America, and it'd be tough to find an option like kind of late at night or something like that, and I'd end up eating crap like potatoes or whatever. And so it got to a point where like I think I was having issues like with the testosterone or something was going on. And I went to see a couple doctors, and they're like, maybe we should introduce meat back into your diet. And I was like, I don't really want to. Like, I feel good, and I feel good about what I'm doing. Like, I feel like I'm making a positive impact on doing my part, that kind of vibe. And so recently I've been eating meat a little bit more and eating dairy, but I would still say 90% plant-based.
Right.
It's really easy with my wife because she's an incredible chef, but anytime we eat together, it's all vegan stuff. So I would still say 90%, plant-based.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't blame you there. Like, if you feel something is going wrong, you want to seek help, right?
Yeah.
So you want to go to your doctor. You want to make sure everything's okay with your blood results and everything. So yeah, dude, don't blame me there at all. And it sounds like you're still eating pretty heavily plant-based.
Yeah.
Your wife is actually, if any of you guys follow her, she's at Nom Yourself on Instagram. Freaking awesome Instagram page, by the way.
Yeah.
Incredible food she posts like every day. So that's awesome. When you first started going vegan, had you noticed any health benefits right away? Do you
it
remember anything?
it was like a light switch was just flipped. Like for like the first, probably about the first year, I just had an excess amount of energy. Like I started doing, whenever I first was vegan, I started doing I was training triathlon. Um, I always wanted to do triathlon. Like I've been cycling like since I was like 20, and like I kind of fell out of it for a little while, and then I got back into it. I was like, you know what, my goal is I want to do a triathlon. I want to do a half Ironman. So I haven't done a half Ironman. I did like a sprint triathlon. So, um, but I was like cycling every day and doing all this stuff, and I'm like, this is great. Like I feel like super energized, and like a lot of times, like I would always like kind of have trouble waking up, but like right when like I would wake up and I would be awake. It
Mm-hmm.
was awesome.
Right, right.
I'm like, this is like incredible.
Yeah.
So like that was like one of the major benefits that I had felt like in the beginning, and then I think that like for me, like as long as I'm trying my hardest to still eat plant based, I can still feel good about it. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
still feel like I'm kind of making a positive difference, and like that's the thing that I think a lot of times it's like all or nothing for a lot of people, which is cool,
Right.
but for me, I'm like, as long as I'm the majority of the time I'm doing this, like I still feel good about it. And it's obviously not my choice. My doctor's like, look, you need to do this, you need to try this. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I do feel better now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's different for everybody, and you got to kind of find your own path. And
Gotcha. And I think what you said, you shouldn't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Like if this is where you're happy, I'm rooting for you, man.
yeah, yeah,
And I made a video about Jared Leto. He's so outspoken about veganism, has spoken up about it for many years. But like when he travels, he'll sometimes cheat, and it's not something like I personally promote. But I'd rather, at the end of the day, I'd rather have more chegans, if you want to call it that, than less vegans. Like less people that eat plant based at all.
hmm
So like the more plant based you eat is what I'm trying to say, the better it is for
right.
you. And that's awesome that you're still kind of sticking with it and not just completely giving it up, like eating
Oh yeah.
Five Guys and like McDonald's all day long. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Tell me what it was like then a little bit on the road. Did you tour as vegan or plant
yeah,
based?
yeah.
How was that?
It was kind of tough in Europe. I feel like they are still kind of like the '90s vegan, where it's like quinoa everything and like
Vegetables.
yeah, yeah, and which is cool. I
Right.
mean, because you probably get more nutrients that way. But um, like my wife's whole outlook on it is like kind of like utilizing the plant-based alternatives, and kind of like making them into something that like they weren't before. Like for instance, like we're doing the biscuit company here in Winter Park, and one of our main staple items is like a vegan chicken sandwich, and so we kind of take the food service Gardein chicken and we bread it like they would at like KFC, and like
Right.
we do like all these things, or Chick-fil-A or whatever. And we make biscuits like they would at any place, but it's all vegan, all plant-based, and you would never know the difference. And so like I fell in love with that. Like I'm like, oh, I love this. So I would try in America. It's easy to find all that stuff like Impossible Burgers and Beyond Burgers, and
Right.
finding restaurants that are kind of pushing the boundary of like what it means to do that. Like that's easy here, and I feel like in Europe it's like they're getting into it,
Yeah.
but not as much. It's hard. Like in there's also like not a lot of late night options, as far as like it's getting better, especially with like Burger King having the Impossible Burger, and you can get it vegan and stuff like that. Like you can eat that late, and that's cool, but that's like a new thing. And um, we haven't been on tour in a while, so whenever I was on tour, it was cool. You get to go and visit all these different restaurants and places and kind of talk to people, and that's really cool. But late night, kind of rough.
Yeah, I hear you, man. But it is getting more vegan friendly. I can say that. Just at least from my experience, you've traveled way more than I have. But what are some of the most like vegan friendly cities or countries that you can remember? What are some of the places you had like really good experiences at?
I would say L.A. obviously
For sure.
vegan mecca.
Everywhere.
L.A., New York is incredible. Boston is incredible. Phoenix is actually amazing.
Oh, nice.
There's a restaurant in Phoenix called Green Restaurant, It's a guy named Chef Damon. He runs a restaurant. Absolutely incredible. One of my favorite vegan restaurants in all of America, in all the
Wow.
world, pretty much. Um, and I mean Orlando, honestly,
Hmm.
like Orlando is it's thriving, and there's probably like 6 full vegan restaurants here that are like some of the best I've had anywhere. And it's really cool. It's cool to be a part of this community here and uh, see I would say the majority of the people that go to the restaurants here in Orlando are not vegan, like the vegan restaurants, and they're like eating this stuff and they're happy about it, and that's a really cool thing. I think that's like one of the biggest reasons that we wanted to kind of open the biscuit company is to kind of even broaden that further and kind of offer more alternatives that can be like, yo, you can eat plant based, you can eat vegan. It doesn't have to be, oh, just quinoa or here's a salad or French fries, whatever. It doesn't have to be like that. So
Yeah, totally. I think Orlando for sure. It's like one of the most vegan friendly cities, and right down the street you have like Ethos Vegan Kitchen,
yeah,
which is
it's
amazing.
a staple. It's been
Yeah,
around like 20 years or something like that.
yeah. Have you guys been?
Oh my god, yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah, yeah.
And what do are any of the other band members plant based, or what do they think about?
Josh is 100% vegetarian,
Oh
full
wow.
time. Um, like everybody's like that's a big thing for the day to remember is we're big into food. Like I think it's been a dream of a couple of ours to kind of own a restaurant or a bar like in our life. Like that's like been something we've been working towards. Jeremy, when he was first coming up, like he was a cook, like he got me
Oh
one of
no
my
way.
first jobs. And we've always been super interested in food. And as we get to travel, going to restaurants, that's like a big part of why we still like traveling. And so, like everyone's into all these different types of food. So like we'll go eat I'll get everyone to go eat plant based every once in a while. It's pretty
That's
cool.
dope.
And a lot of people in our crew are vegan. Our sound guy's vegan. Our monitor guy's vegan. Our drum tech, he eats plant based probably 60% of the time.
Wow.
Uh, my guitar tech, the guy who I'm doing their album, his name's Max. He was vegan for almost 2 years with me, and
Dang.
so yeah, he was my roommate when I first met Mary, and we would kind of do all these like fad diets or whatever. Really, back in like we'd be like, oh, let's do like Whole30 or let's do this or let's do that,
Right.
because we like to challenge ourselves in that way, which is why I think it kind of lent myself to be like, oh, I can do this. When at first I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like this
Yeah.
seems kind of
Sure.
crazy, and then I did it, and I'm like, oh, this is just like challenging myself to be like, no, you can stick to these guidelines, and then um, once you kind of once you do it for a little bit, you start doing it for different reasons. In the beginning, I did it for like health reasons, and I'm like, yeah, I'll try to get healthy. And then like I was like, man, I feel really good that I'm not like eating animals
Right.
or like using any of these products or like supporting factory farming and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool, I can get behind this. And then that's why I kept doing it. So yeah, it's it's easier when you have a bunch of people around, like having those people on our crew and stuff like that, and then having the dudes in the band that are willing to go to like those restaurants and stuff like that.
For sure.
Yeah,
I didn't realize so much of A Day to Remember was vegan, like behind the scenes or
yeah,
like just you guys, the
yeah,
front line.
yeah,
So that's really awesome. Do you ever see yourself doing the vegan thing again or like going 100% in?
yeah. I mean, I would still be doing it if I wasn't kind of dealing with what I had dealt with for a little bit. I haven't really talked to many people about it, but it was like kind of like I was dealing with like a not protein deficiency. That's what everyone says. No, it was it was like a testosterone deficiency, and so Mary and I were trying to have kids, and like we're kind of dealing with like some stuff that was happening because of that, and the doctor couldn't figure out what it was, and then he's like, let's just try this, and I was like, I don't want to, like I feel good what I'm doing. He's like, but you don't feel good, and I'm like, okay. I was like, I didn't want to take any like medicine or whatever. I don't like doing that. Like, and so he's like, let's just try this. He's like, you were good before you started doing this. I'm like, yeah, but I felt better once I started. He's like, yeah, sometimes that happens. Like your body will transition and it'll start to do these things, and then after a while, it kind of loses I was like, oh, okay, cool. I don't know anything about it. So I did it and I felt better. And so like I was like, I still kind of like that feeling like I'm doing something uh, that's bigger than me, like still being a part of helping out and doing all these things. So I still try to do it as much as possible. Yeah, I would. I think I could do it if I could kind of figure out what was causing that thing and then
Right.
fix that. Maybe it's the B vitamin supplements or getting the shots or whatever. I don't know,
Right.
something.
Yeah, dude, totally. I think, and again, kudos to you for going to your doctor, by the way, and not letting it become a bigger problem.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, well, you know, I would definitely look more in towards like a whole food plant based diet. See
Which
what
is which is what Mary. She's like, you need to just
she's
do
been
whole
saying that,
foods, plant based,
right?
and that's hard. It's especially hard out on the road.
If you're not used to it, that could be hard alone because your taste buds have to
I think that's what it is.
adapt to it, right? I mean, yeah, if you've grown up like eating like I don't know, like chicken sandwiches and French fries your whole life, which a lot of people are doing that now,
Hmm.
believe it or not. I mean, it's hard to get used to just quinoa and vegetables and beans and
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
It's tough, and especially like I said earlier, one of the biggest things that I find joy in is going to restaurants and being and having that camaraderie with a group of people. And like when we go on tour, like I'm not the type of person that's going to be like, yo, you guys should do this too, or let's all do this together or whatever. Like I
Right,
would be like, hey, let's go eat at this restaurant. It's really good. It's rated really well. It's a vegan restaurant. Everyone would be like, oh, cool.
right.
And then the next day off, they're like, we're gonna go eat a steakhouse, and I'm like, oh well, I can't eat anything there, so I would end up going off by myself,
Sure.
and I would be like that kind of made me a little sad. So like that was a tough part for me whenever I was vegan is like not having that, not being able to have that experience with people all the time of like going and sitting down and eating and
Yeah.
kind of being together. I always felt like I was missing out, and
I'm sure the tour was the toughest part for
it,
sure.
it was, yeah.
Um,
Because at home, it's like we eat together all the time. It's like,
right.
yeah, we have our friends here and stuff. So,
That's what I've heard from some of the musicians I've talked to is it's when they go on tour
hmm.
that they're challenged. But at home, like either their family or friends are vegan and
Hmm.
it's they cook vegan at home.
Hmm.
So but yeah, man, feel free to stay in touch. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this before. I'm a nutritionist, so
Oh,
if
rad.
you have any questions, dude, like feel free to shoot them my way. I would love to see you, like stay plant based for sure. But if you're looking to go fully vegan, like I'm right there for you, man. Either
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
I'm rooting for you.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
dope, man. Well, dude, so um, I can't believe you're a freaking cyclist, man. Can you talk a little bit about that? How did you get into cycling?
When I was younger, so I lived in Gainesville. Gainesville was like the first big city outside of Ocala that was the next natural move for us. Like whenever I was younger, um, Jeremy, our singer, he was dating this girl, and she was going to the University of Florida, and so I would always go up there and hang out with them and kind of party and whatever. It was like it was around the time that I probably should have been in college, but I was in a day to remember. Um, so we would go up there and hang out, and then I started dating Jeremy's girlfriend's sister.
Okay,
So they kind of lived near each other, and then I ended up moving up there, and um, a lot of the big fad up there was like fixed gear. So everyone was like riding fixed gear. We'd go to like critical mass, and we'd do all that stuff, like kind of like participate in all those. There's like a bunch of like alley cat events that like I went to, and I was like, oh, this is really rad. Like I think that it could be really fun to do this, and I was kind of looking for something to kind of stay healthy, and I'm like, this is like not like regular exercise. Like I can go ride the trail or I can ride around town, and I feel like I'm getting exercise, but I'm seeing stuff and seeing part of the city
right.
that I never got to
And
see,
you're
and
out in nature.
yeah,
It's
I love it.
beautiful.
Yeah. So that's the real reason I started, and I started riding like a bunch of fixed gear stuff, which was like kind of the trend and hype at the time.
Hipsters.
Yeah, yeah. And Gainesville it's like Austin or Portland, but just in Florida.
Right.
So it's super hip. Um, but then me and my buddy, we started this clothing company, and it was kind of based around that. It was like based around fixed freestyle, which was like at the time kids doing like insane tricks on their freestyle bike or on their fixed gear bikes. So like they'd hit big stair sets on their fixed gear, like our 26-inch bikes. And so we started supporting a lot of the kids that were doing that, a lot of kids that were skateboarding. And then it kind of, I was like, you know what, this is rad. But like I wasn't doing that kind of stuff. I was kind of more interested in like long distance cycling. Like
Yeah.
started watching the Tour de France, started watching a lot of the other big cycling events like the Australian tour and like all that kind of stuff. And I watched it online. I'm like, this is so rad. Like I didn't know that you could ride this far on a bike. I'm like, I didn't think that this was like humanly possible.
So are you more into road now?
Now, yeah, that's all I do
Yeah.
is like road bike stuff. So, um, my buddy, he's like, yeah, we should start doing it. And so we started riding. I would ride like, my goal was to ride from Ocala to Gainesville. Like from when I was growing up, I'm like, that just seems so far. And so I started training. There was like a little spot up there where you could ride from Gainesville to Interlochen. It was called, I don't remember the trail.
How
Um,
many miles is that though from
it,
Ocala to Gainesville?
it was only 50 miles. But to
Oh,
me, I'm
really?
like, this
Oh, sure.
is
Back in the day,
yeah, I was
yeah,
like, this is insane. I
you
could
can't
never ride
comprehend
50
that.
miles. And so it was when we were recording What Separates Me From You.
Wow.
And so I was living in Gainesville, but driving to Ocala. And I'm like, I'm going to ride my bike to the studio one day and just like show up. And people are like, you're not going to fucking do that. You're not going to do that. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. And so like I started training for that. Like it was like some big feat. And did that. Got like a Cannondale. It was like my first real road bike. Um, and I did that. And I was like, oh, that was it. That was easy. And then I kind of like fell out. Like I fell out of it. We started touring more. I tried to bring my bike on the road. It ended up getting beat up pretty bad in the trailer and truck and stuff. And then I like broke halfway through the tour, so I didn't have my bike, and I was sad. We weren't making like insane money, but so when I got home, I got it fixed. But then it broke again, and then I'm like,
Damn.
this sport is insanely expensive.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's a rabbit hole too.
oh my gosh,
You could buy like all sorts of parts and upgrades, and you can't stop.
right? And you think that it's all about if I get more aero, if I get like a
Right.
little bit less weight, I'll make up these like little few seconds or whatever. And so I kind of like fell out of it for a while. And then maybe 3 years ago, I kind of got back into it and got into it like super heavy. And then since then, I ended up getting a new bike. I got like a Cervelo, like the S3.
Oh,
Like
nice.
it's like a Ferrari.
Yeah, no,
It's
that's a great
so
bike.
sick. And then I got into it. And then I talked to my sister and we signed up for a triathlon. I started following this guy, the vegan cyclist.
Yeah, sure, Tyler.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
yeah. And so I'm like, he was like, one of his videos was him um, doing his first triathlon. And I kind of suck at swimming, and he kind of sucked at swimming, but he made up all of his time on his bike. And I'm like, I feel like I don't have like, I wasn't doing what he was doing, but I'm like, if I have any chance of doing well in this, I'll make up all my time on my bike and I'll just have
Right.
to kind of like deal with it on the run, whatever. And so started following him and kind of got inspired by what he was doing. And I was doing the vegan thing. I'm like, this is rad, I'm like, I can kind of see a lot of the similarities in what we're doing, and talked to him a little bit, like wrote him a couple times, and gave me a bunch of words of encouragement and stuff. So I was like, this is really rad. So I started training on like Zwift and doing all that stuff. And I was able to bring that on the road. Like I had my like Wahoo kicker thing.
Really? While touring?
Yeah, yeah. And I
Rad,
like could
dude.
put it under the bus, and then I had my bike. I would connect it to it, and I had my computer, and I would ride every day. I'd ride like 27 miles a day, like when we were
Right.
touring then. Did the triathlon, ended up getting second place in my age group. It was pretty
Nice.
rad. Beat my sister. That's all I care about. And then I like I pulled my groin doing it, and I was like, and then I was like, I can't let this affect being on tour, like cycling, because it was just at that point it's like a hobby.
Right.
And I've since gotten healthy and I've started riding again. I'm trying to do like 100 miles a week is what I want to do, which is not that much, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little route around town. It's like 20 miles, and I my guitar tech he rides it with me. So
Do you ride with a power meter?
yeah,
Like, are you? Yeah, you track all that.
yeah,
Right on. Do you use Strava too,
yeah, yeah,
dude?
yeah,
You're on it, man.
yeah.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what is your FDP? Are you willing to give that up?
220.
220. Okay,
It's
dude,
not
that not
crazy
bad,
high,
man.
but yeah.
That's great. I mean, so how often are you riding now? Like you're like just to like set the setting or whatever. You're here in town, like you're recording, right? You're
Mhm,
local, you're not touring. How
right.
much are you riding now versus like if you're gonna go on tour again?
Well, so if I was gonna sign up to do an event or something, I would ramp up, like get crazy with it. Like I would go and find like I haven't done any like road races. I've only done triathlon. So when I was training for that, I was going crazy, whatever. But then now I like hurt myself, kind of got out of it, and like every once in a while, like I would like start to do it again and kind of like feel something happen, and I would kind of shy away from it, and then whatever. And so I would say maybe a month and a half ago, I'm like, nah, I'm doing this. I'm gonna like find a race, whatever. I haven't signed up for one yet, but um, I've been doing like 2, 3, 4 times a week, the 20-mile lap around town, and yeah, it's when I go back on tour, I just take my Wahoo, my little
Yeah,
kicker or whatever it
why
is. But
not? That's perfect for the
yeah,
bus. But um, are you thinking of doing crits? What are you thinking of doing?
those scare me. They're fucking gnarly, but I would love to do that. I think that stuff's so rad, like the like small circuit stuff and everything.
Dude, I don't want to like, change your decision. I used to live in Miami and I did crits down there and it was the worst. I don't know how they are around this area, but there's like crashes every single
Yes,
race, dude.
I
Like
noticed
be
that.
careful because I'd rather have you touring
Yeah,
and like playing to your millions of fans than like wrecking yourself at a crit.
yeah.
It is so dangerous, man.
Well, it's like the coolest videos to watch online. Like I always like watch like the race videos, and I'm like, this is so rad.
That's
And
true.
then like you in it, like in the thing, and it's almost never the person's fault. It's
No.
like somebody else in
Mm-hmm.
the field or something happens, and it's always so like it's so competitive.
Yeah.
Uh, I would love to do it,
Right.
but
It's an experience for sure, and I
yeah,
think
yeah,
you totally should go into it and see how it is. But yeah, it can be the stupidest stuff, like your handlebars getting caught and just like anything, man.
yeah,
Um, but that's awesome. Are you thinking of doing like longer road races as well?
yeah, yeah. That's kind of like
That would be fun.
that's like
Yeah.
more my I think my speed, like a Fondo or some stuff like that. I heard there's a one close by here that's
Yeah.
like pretty rad.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens in Claremont, so
Yeah,
we've done that a few
yeah,
times.
yeah.
Like Century. So there's the Tour Latino coming up, and I forget if it's this month or next month. So
Hmm.
look out for that. And the biggest one is definitely Horrible 100 around like Thanksgiving. So
And that
that's a good
goes
one.
out there in
Yeah,
Claremont.
yeah, same area.
There was one that just happened up in Williston, Gainesville area. It was the Doc Hollywood Invitational.
Oh,
It's like 80 miles. It's like once a year. It just happened. So the Doc Hollywood ride, that's like 80 miles up in Gainesville. That was another one that kind of like a lot of the people that I would go and was kind of getting into the Winter Park scene. There's like a ride called Lakemont Ride. You can kind of look at their group up on Strava and all that stuff. But it's pretty cool. They have like a 40-mile ride, and then like for the people that like they'll have people that'll come out and train from like the UCF cycling team, and then they'll have like every once in a while there'll be like pros out there that'll come and ride, and they go psycho. They're like holding like 26 miles per hour. I'm like
jeez.
I get dropped pretty quickly, but which is the worst because then you're like having to like fight the whole time. But they'll do that every Saturday, and there's a bunch of bike shops around here
Yeah.
that are like really really good and doing a bunch of cool events and stuff. So I love that. I love to be. I try to be a part of it as much as possible, but my thing is I can't wreck. I can't
No,
be a
man.
part of like some like tight pack
No
and
way. No way. I mean, imagine what that would do to like your band and like
yeah.
everything you have
It's more
planned.
than me,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like the crew can't make money if we're not playing
Yeah,
shows and everyone else can't do this stuff, and so
right.
I would
Yeah.
love to, but yeah.
But it's a great sport. I mean, I'm sure like even if you don't ride like or take your bike with on tour, the beautiful thing is like you can hop on a bike when you get back home, and
Hmm.
it's just like how you left it. I
Hmm.
mean, you never forget to learn how to ride a bike, and like it's just beautiful, man. You get right back into it, and it's one of those things you can pick up like anytime.
I've kind of had that. I've had that experience with it where it's like when I had kind of hurt myself and then riding again, I was just like the first week was kind of terrible because like I'd want to push myself to be like where I was when I left off.
Right.
I'd be like trying to meet those like trying to hit
Oh
that
yeah.
FTP. I'm like I am not this anymore.
Yeah, I didn't mean it like that. Like, yeah, it's so hard to get back into like, your exact
Yeah,
FTP.
yeah,
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 that
yeah.
takes a little while, but
But it comes back quick.
oh,
Like
sure.
2 weeks in, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is great.
Right,
So
right. What did the other guys like to do if you don't mind me asking?
we all for a little while we all did Insanity. Like
Is that like a Spartan race or something?
it was it was this company called Beachbody. It's like one of those videos that you can watch.
Oh, yeah,
The
like
dude Sean T.
P90X,
Yeah, yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
So we would all do that as a group, and so we would go
Oh,
and
cool.
do that, and they would do that. Jeremy has a Peloton, so he kind of does that shit in
Nice.
his house, which is pretty rad. And then Alex kind of hangs out. He just has a really fast metabolism. He can eat whatever he wants and doesn't really work out. He's a drummer. He's just skinny. And yeah, Josh, me, and Kevin and Jeremy, we would always do Insanity and stuff like
That's
that.
cool,
But yeah,
man. So yeah, dude, I want to transition to the music now. We haven't even talked about that. Just want to say, dude, like, yeah, A Day to Remember, like, one of my favorite freaking bands. Like, you guys put out, like, the best music videos, I should say, like, the
oh,
most
thank you.
entertaining. And yeah, I love it. And you guys put a lot of production into it. And I said this off camera before, but if anyone has the chance and is lucky enough to go to one of your shows, they know how professionally well it's done. The screens will come back. Like, you guys have what, four screens that come down? And
It's different every tour.
really,
Yeah, but I think you're talking about the tour before the one we just did, where
yes.
like the show starts and it looks like there's nothing up there.
Yes, like you guys would play UB Tales, I'll Be Sonic, and
Yeah,
you'll play freaking retro Sonic behind when you guys are playing
yeah,
live,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
so awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest things that's important to us is we want to put on a show that even if you're not into A Day to Remember, you're not into this music, and let's say you come to the show with a friend, or maybe it's a parent bringing their kid to the show because the kid likes the band or whatever. We want it to be something that you could be entertained by no matter what. If we're playing a festival and you've never heard of A Day to Remember, you can watch the show and be like, holy crap, this is amazing. That's our goal. And so we always invest in that. We always invest in the production side of it. And that, I think that's like one of the most important things you can do.
Well, I think visuals is a huge thing when it comes to music. Like, for example, I think a lot of people get a weird, like, they interpret metal as like being satanic or just like, I don't know, just like something negative or terrible.
Right.
And it's actually one of my favorite genres. But if you look at like Paranoia, right? You guys' music videos, like you have to have the visual there. Like the guy's struggling, he's going through something. There's a reason why like he's screaming and kind of like
Yeah.
has that aggressive vibe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think whatever visuals you guys play behind your music at live shows, there's a reason behind that.
Oh, always. It's always to help tell the story. Like in you bringing up Paranoia, like the guy that the shadow thing, that is that emotion of paranoia. That is that feeling of being anxious or paranoid or any of those kind of feelings that you like a lot of us deal with, like, and that's kind of what it is. It's from that perspective. That's what the song is written from. It's about someone dealing with that, and then this emotion being like, I always have control over you. And then it's kind of like you getting that back. That's what it's about. And in every visual that we put out, any piece of art, it's very heavily thought out. It's always to aid the story or to help tell what that emotion is visually. Like,
Right.
it's awesome that you noticed that because
Oh
not
yeah.
many people. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have noticed it, but not many people have talked to us about
Right.
it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always like watching a music video because, like, I know exactly what the singer or the band is like visualizing or seeing or thinking about when, like, we hear the music. You know
yeah,
what I mean? I
yeah,
think that's a really cool experience. And it's a shame. like I'm sure back in our days, like we would turn on MTV or any other music channels, and we would watch music videos go on for like marathons. And
Yeah,
now there's like reality shows and a
yeah,
bunch of other stuff
yeah,
on.
yeah,
So I don't think really like the next generation appreciates music videos like probably like we did.
yeah. I mean, it's cool that we have YouTube. I mean,
Yes.
that's rad,
Yep.
and it's rad that like you can go on there and watch all this stuff for free. I think that's really cool too. So, it's not the same. It I think that what's so hard about it is when we were growing up, we didn't have to think about like what was going to be playing next. We're like, "Oh, I hope that I get to see a Newfound Glory video, or I hope that I get to see a Blink-182 video or whatever." And you would watch MTV and be like, oh, "It's on right now. They're playing it. This is crazy, whatever." And like nowadays you can go and be like, "Well, I'm going to look this up," or "I'm going to look this up." But it's like if you don't know what to look up, it's kind of like option paralysis. Whereas
Right.
with MTV, they're like, "All right, we're going to play these and we're going to play
Right.
these." And it was kind of cool because you could just sit and watch and not really think about it. So it'd be cool if there was like something like that on YouTube. Like if they like kind of had different channels that were like curated for
Right.
things, and you could just sit back and not even think
Just
about
like,
it.
yeah, just streaming you a bunch of new
New
music and
music,
yeah.
yeah, and it could be hosted by somebody or something. I think it'd be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Good ideas, YouTube.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, listen to that. Yeah, man. So take me back to before 2003. That's where you got when you guys started.
Hmm.
How was life back then? What were you up to?
Uh, Before A Day to Remember,
Yeah,
uh, I was 15 years old when I joined A Day to Remember. So I was,
freaking baby. That's
yeah,
what you were.
yeah. There was another band called 2 Days Too Late, and it was basically A Day to Remember before A Day to Remember. So it was A Day to Remember without Jeremy.
I saw Jeremy had that on his shirt. I didn't think anything of it,
Yeah,
but
that was like our band like forever ago. So
crazy.
my involvement in the whole thing is like I was in 2 Days Too Late for a little while, and then I got kicked out for Tom. So Tom joined 2 Days Too Late, and I got kicked out
Oh,
of
no
because
kidding.
I wasn't as good a guitar player as Tom. And so I would put on shows at my house, and like we had like this space, and like we'd have people come in and pay, and I booked like 2 Days Too Late, and then All for Nothing, which was Jeremy's band, and there was this other band that played. And so a bunch of people would come, and I ended up paying out all the bands, and I was like the promoter. This was like I was like 14 years old. It was crazy.
So interesting.
My parents let me do this. It was, I don't know why. And so I kind of like became close with everybody, and um like kind of got to know. And then at the time, John Kahn, who was the bass player of 2 Days Too Late, and then eventually the first bass player of The Day to Remember, um, him, Tom, our old drummer Bobby, left 2 Days Too Late and then went to start a new band. And so they found Jeremy, and then Jeremy joined that group. Well, they started the band with together. And there was another guitar player. His name was Joe Barnes, and he was in the band for 3 shows. And he was in this other band that I was also in. I was in the band with Joe and this other guy Randy, called A Day to Remember, and it was A Day to Remember. It wasn't the same band. It was like a different band. Bobby was in that band as well. It was a really small scene, and we
Right.
all kind of like shared members and stuff like that. So, um, then Joe never played a full show with A Day to Remember. His biggest influence was Kurt Cobain, so he would always like wreck his guitar and like whatever at the end of the set, and he wouldn't end up playing the show. And so it got to a point where everyone's like kind of fed up with him doing these antics and whatever, and we're like, "Yo, just play the show, whatever." And so he got kicked out, and like I was close with everybody, and John was my best friend. He's like, "Yo, come try out, come do
Right.
this thing," and I'm like, "Okay." So I tried out, and that was the rest was history. Like all we did then was like skateboard and listen to Blink-182. Blink-182 is my favorite band. Um, like in a bunch of other punk bands and whatever, and play music, and then so it kind of transitioned into that.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
where this is such a cliche question. I always try to avoid them, but where does like a day to remember come from? How did that name
it
pop up?
was it was actually that Joe Barnes was his name. he came up. His girlfriend at the time came up with the name for the band, and then when he was in the band took on that name. But then he got kicked out because he never played a full show, and so the band just kept the name. And it's just kind of about. It's not really about anything, but I guess if you want to like truly think about it, it's like it's about that time. It's about being a kid, going to shows, and just making those memories, and like being having that escape from everything else. It's like this could be in a day to remember. Like let's make this a day to remember. Like it's about doing things that you will remember and doing things that are important to you and going to shows and kind of creating those memories that will last forever. Like I know that like some of the first shows I ever went to, and I could probably tell you every instance of exactly what happened during the day because I was so excited about it. It's all I could think about. And it's about creating those instances and those experiences for people everywhere. Like the stuff that we grew up with and the
Yeah.
stuff that we still experience. Like we
Right.
still go to shows now and we're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
amazing and
Such a
stuff.
good
So
feeling, man.
yeah, yeah,
For sure. I still feel like a kid, like a high school kid, like rocking out at shows. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly.
It's awesome. That feeling never dies. But
That's what it is. Like
yeah,
in so many words, like I'm not so eloquent, but
right on.
that's what it is.
Um, yeah, yeah, awesome. And I wanted to ask you, so your influence, as you mentioned, it was Blink 182. They're your favorite band.
Hmm.
You guys sound nothing like Blink 182, and
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, you don't want to be like the next whatever. Like, you want to be your own,
Hmm.
um, but like it is quite different from like the light punk rock, like Blink 182 style music, than like your guys' heavier, like somewhat metal music that you guys
Yeah.
produce. Any particular reason why you went that way, or was it like Jeremy's perspective of wanting to do more like screaming type of vocals?
I mean, it honestly, the real reason was because in Ocala, where we grew up, um, the scene was very heavy. Like some of like our favorite band at the time was this band Seven Star, heavily influenced us. There was this Christian hardcore band from Ocala, and their bass player Drew Russ, who does all of our music videos now, he's still very heavily involved with us. He doesn't do all of them now, but he has done a majority of our music videos. um, he would always bring bands into town, and so they were always heavy bands. And if you wanted to play a good show in Ocala, you played with heavy bands. And so that was like another huge influence for us. Is like we loved punk, we loved pop punk, um, we loved rock like in general, and then metal, hardcore. It all was like what influenced our band. Like and everyone in the band has such eclectic influences.
Right.
Like trying to fit all of that into songs and albums and making everyone happy is kind of how A Day to Remember became so diverse.
And I like that. I like that you guys weren't like, cocky in the sense like, no, I just want to be a metal band or I just want to be a punk band. I
Right.
really like the perspective or the pathway that you guys took, and
Yeah.
that's a little bit of everything because you cater to a lot of people that way.
And honestly, it was just making all of us happy,
Right.
which, us being so different and such different people, it kind of works that way by accident. And getting like when we started playing in Ocala, if you didn't have breakdowns, like no one cared, which was so weird.
Hmm.
But it's like, but it wasn't even like the breakdowns that made people like us. It was like that everything was so catchy, and then they
Yeah.
could also mosh and dance and
Right.
whatever. And so that's kind of what made that happen. Ocala, I guess.
Yeah. And Degenerates, one of you guys' new songs,
Hmm.
I feel like a little bit of Blink 182 vibe in that song. I don't
Yeah,
know if that was on purpose or not, but it definitely I definitely get that, like hearing listen to it.
it was. I feel like anytime we go to write something, it's never with, hey, we want to do this.
Right.
It's like whatever comes out,
Yeah.
and then we're like, oh, that's kind of like that. That's weird. Okay, cool. Yeah, Degenerates. It's people have said that. I was like, they said like a Newfound Glory or All Time Low or
Right.
Blink vibe, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, huh, I never even thought about it like that.
Huh.
I guess,
But
but
that's a good song. And while we're on the Blink 182 topic, the number 44 keeps popping up,
mhm.
and I've read some stuff online. Nobody's got like a clear answer to it. But does it have anything to do with that side project of Mark Hoppus plus 44, or is there another story behind it?
uh, yeah, it has not. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Um, it's so it's a weird thing. Like, so Josh and I, we when we were touring in a van, um, I had this crazy dream. Like, I remember just sleeping in the van. We woke up and we were driving, and I like looked at him and told him about this dream that I had. I was like, this number was like following me everywhere, and like I was like seeing it and everything. And for some reason, like I don't know why, but it just feels like it's like a guiding force or like a curse. We weren't sure. Like in the beginning, we didn't know what it was. It was just something that meant something to us for no reason. Like I
Huh.
had this dream. I told Josh about it. Right when I told him about it, we're in the van driving. As soon as I'm still telling him, we like look up, and it was like, I'm like, I keep seeing it everywhere. And then we look up and it was like, win the lottery, 44 million. I'm like, what the fuck? This is so weird. And then we like look over at the clock and it was like 11:44 in the morning. And
What?
I'm like, dude, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like getting kind of
Uh huh.
goosebumps thinking about it. And so we just kept seeing it everywhere. And for a while we weren't sure if it was like this curse, like, if we're seeing it, it's not like a good thing or uh whatever. I don't know. And like at the time, um, Mark Hoppus had the band plus 44. I'm like, dude, this is so weird. Like
Was
it
this
didn't it
before
didn't
that band
it
came
was
out?
it was it was like as it was happening.
Wow.
And so we had saw that movie 23 with Jim Carrey, how like he keeps seeing the number, and we like joked around about it. I'm like, what if it's like that? Like where we just keep
Yeah.
seeing it and it like we like obsessed
Or
over it
like
and all this.
Lost. Have you
Yeah.
ever seen Lost
Yeah,
with
we
the
were
numbers
obsessed
that
with
come up?
Lost. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were obsessed with Lost. So I'm like telling Josh about it, and Josh loved Lost. So Josh like got on board, and like he started seeing it everywhere. And I think that like once you, I don't know what it is, maybe it's like a law of attraction or whatever, but like once you like know about it, like once you kind of know, we call it 44 curse. Once you have the curse, you start to see it everywhere. Like you'll randomly look at the clock and it's like 7:44 or whatever. And the more I thought about it, I was like, this is kind of crazy because where I grew up, I was I was born, the hospital I was born in was on Highway 441. And then my first house that I ever lived in was off Highway 441. Um, I was born at 4:41 in the morning. So like um, my whole thing is my number is 441, so 441. But it's like 44 is like the thing that we always see, and it's like what links us. Like, and we kind of have it on all of our stuff, and we're like, this could be a cool thing. I don't know why it meant so much in the beginning, like, but we like it like latched onto it, and then we started talking about it more with the band, and then everyone that we kind of told this story to, like of what happened to us, they're like, dude, I've been seeing it everywhere. Like I'll look here and it'll be there. I'll look here or do something and it'll be 44, and they're like, I keep seeing it, and so they always like it reminds them of us, and so
Jeez.
it was cool because like Blink is my favorite band. Like,
For sure.
and I always like looked up to Mark Hoppus. Like, if I when I was first starting to play an instrument, I wanted to play bass because I'm like, I want to be like Mark Hoppus. And then he started plus 44, and I was just like, what the fuck?
Well, did you ever talk to him about it?
No, I haven't. I haven't told him about
Dude, you
it.
should tell him about that. That's
It's
such a creepy
it
story.
is a creepy story. It's so
Oh my
weird.
god.
Um, yeah, that's kind of what. Like, look at this. See, like, so this thing, Ampete. I don't even. This has nothing to do with anything. I needed this because it runs all of my guitar amps.
Right.
It's called the 444.
Wow.
And it like doesn't have anything to do with anything, and like you'll just randomly see it, and you'll probably, now that you know the story,
Yeah.
you're gonna start to see it around, and you're gonna be
I
like,
hope
this is
not.
fucking weird. It's not a bad thing. It's and I feel like more now, whenever I see it, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. Like I feel like it's the universe's like little way of being
Oh, so
like,
you feel like it's
you're
a
on
good
your
sign.
path. Yeah.
Ah,
And
okay.
I feel like I'm doing the right thing, the thing that I should be doing. For a while I wasn't sure. Like I didn't know. Like
Yeah,
I don't think any of us knew. And now I feel like the more I see it, I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
that's good to
This
know.
is this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely seen it in your music videos. So I was like, what is that? Does he really like plus 44 that much?
Yeah, I
But
have it tattooed on my hands.
nice. And you have the
Yeah,
Blink 182 as well.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I really wanted to ask you about that. So thanks for clearing that up, man.
I don't think I've ever told that story. So
Really? Am I
yeah,
the first one?
yeah,
Dude, hopefully I asked a bunch of like first time questions too.
yeah,
I'm honored.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so dude, day to remember, like you guys are internationally known, like huge success. Can you talk a little bit about like how you guys got from being high school kids to like playing in your backyards to or whatever, like local parties, to touring the world? Like how does that go? I'm sure it's a long story, but
Uh, it we just in the beginning we just played as much as we could, and we sucked really bad. Um, and the more we played, the better we wanted to be, and the more opportunities that we were given to be like, hey, come do this tour or whatever. Um, like it was that motivation and the want to be better, and playing as much as we possibly could. We literally played, I think, in the beginning of our band, we for 4 years straight. We were on tour for 10 months out of the year, 10, 11 months out of the year. And that's kind of like when Homesick was written, like when we were doing all that, like we were on tour with For Those Who Have Heart. We for 3 years straight, like we didn't get a hotel room. We slept in our van, or we slept at fans' houses and stuff like that. And we just saved our money and kept reinvesting into the band. And that's when we were like, you know what? We got to invest in production. We got to invest in like good merchandise, and we got to invest in the show and the experience. Um, and we got to get better. We got to play more. We got to just practice. And we were practicing like 2 or 3 times a week. And when we weren't on tour, and then we would tour like, so I think one year we played over like 300 shows in a year. It was like fucking crazy. Um, but I really think that that's what it was. I think that like pushing and playing and honing our craft and being a band together is really what like kind of pushed that. And then we took every opportunity. In the beginning, they were like, you can go to Europe. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be really hard. You're gonna have to do it this way. And we were like, that's fine. And we would go and do it. And one of the first times we went there was with this band called Maylene and the Sons of Disaster, which was Dallas. He was the original singer of Under Oath. And we really looked up to him because he's from Ocala, and we loved Under Oath. We loved what he did in Under Oath. And so he took us out over there for the first time, and it was rough. Like we all had no money, and um, it was cold. It was in January, and we all were splitting like this bus, and it was like this old bus. And it was situations like that that kind of like honed us into what we were doing. And we are like, if we can go and play these shows and be on this tour and do well, we can do well anywhere. And all we have to do is keep doing it. That's it. That's all we have to do. Um, just keep trying and touring and playing shows and stuff like that. And so I think that that's really what led to the success of our band, and going and taking opportunities and taking risks of going to new places. Like that's another thing. I think playing Australia and developing that, and developing South America, and developing Europe and Southeast Asia, and never really being like, oh, a lot of our friends that are in bands, they didn't develop those territories. And now, like, because you can only have a lifespan in America for so long. Like, even like the attention span here is really short, and it's like people they're like, oh, I've seen that band 5 times, I don't want to go see them again.
right.
So it's like if you haven't developed like Europe and Australia and South America and Asia, um, then you don't have a way to split up your touring. You don't have a way to go and continue to grow as artists uh, whenever America doesn't care about you anymore, which will eventually happen. I
Hmm.
feel like that happens to every band, or bands go in waves. Like
Right.
this band's popular again, or this band's not popular. Whatever. So that's probably how I think personally. That's how we've kind of done that.
So it's so good to hear that. I mean, one of my favorite songs by you guys is actually Right Back at It Again.
Yeah.
because it's that story. It's like where you guys came from to where you are now. And one of the lyrics from it, and I hope like I don't butcher it, it's you guys left home with no kind of backup plan, and everybody that you knew that you couldn't stand
Hmm.
said if you can't make it here, you won't make it there.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you, like, what are some of the things you guys heard, that were a little bit discouraging when you guys first started out that kind of made you think, well, should we keep going? Are they right or are we right?
It was it was because our band was like mixing all these genres, and everyone was like, why are you doing that? Like, don't do that. Like, that's not, no one wants that, you know? In the beginning, no one understood what we were doing. Like, no one understood that we had all these influences, and it was super eclectic for us. And that we were just trying to fit in all of these different places. That was us, though. Like, we were finding ourselves in that process. Like, we were like, we love going to hardcore shows and moshing, and we like going to pop punk shows and singing along and whatever. And we liked it all. And it wasn't like we were this type of person. No, we were like, no, we are, all of this is us. Like, we are all of it, you know? Um, and so people will be like, no one wants that. No one wants a band that does that. And I think that maybe bands that had done that before us, they maybe weren't as successful because uh, some of their influences or whatever, they didn't really dive in and go head first and all in. Like, I think that that's the biggest thing is, and why we were successful is we didn't have a backup plan. It was all in from the beginning, and we were lucky enough to have found each other, that were five of us, to be like, this is what we're doing, this is what we want to do, and we're going to do it no matter what. Because it's, I feel like a lot of times you're not able to find that. Like, some people in the group are like, I need to go to college, or
Right.
my parents don't want me to do that, or
Or
whatever.
they have like a family and like
Yeah,
leaving home is just not practical for them.
right. And we found each other at the right age, and it was just the perfect storm. Like, we all were willing to kind of be like, what we have at home is rad, but we want more. And we all had that same ambition and that same drive. And it all happened at the same time. So I feel like that's really important, and it's not something that you get very often. And that's why there's a lot of bands that aren't very successful, is because, or a lot of bands that have a lot of potential, but maybe don't reach that level of success, is because one of those factors didn't work out. And we just got lucky enough to where they all were like, oh shit, this is all right.
Right.
Okay, cool. You know?
Do you think that the way the music scene is now with like, CDs being a little bit outdated, like everything is streamed online,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of piracy going on as well. Do you think that like all in mentality still applies to people who want to make it in the music scene or anything creative?
Yes, I think that anything creative, you have to put your entire self, your entire being into it, because especially now more than ever, a lot of the technology and the tools, like for instance Spotify, or how people are producing music, has gotten so much more user friendly, that a lot more people can make music and it's easier. But it's the people that will put their whole, like their whole being, their whole self into that, and kind of do the 10,000 hours thing, where they master whatever it is that they're doing, that will like rise above, that will stand out, because I feel like now that's what you need to do, because it is easier. So there's going to be so many more people out there doing it and trying to uh, do something that seems easy, but it's not easy. It's like the hardest. It's like more, it's more than even having like a 40-hour a week job, I think, because it never ends. You got to be thinking about it when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you're eating, you have to constantly be thinking about it, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Right.
Always.
So always stay hungry.
Always. You have
Yeah.
to. And even us now, like, even at the level of success that we've reached, we still have that. No, we're still striving for perfection, which is like, it's like a blessing and a curse. But that's what it's all about. I think that's where success comes from. Especially nowadays, as things get easier to do, and as like producing these types of things becomes more of a reality for more people, you have to really focus, really put all of yourself into it. Uh, and because if you don't, then somebody else will,
Right,
and
right.
they'll get the success.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
and nothing you can do about it. Absolutely, man. I love hearing stories like that, and like not so much like about people bragging about their success and what they got. I'm more into like what they didn't have and what they did to get what they have now.
yeah.
It gives me freaking goosebumps, man. And again, that's why I love that song so much. Right back at it again. So
It Jeremy absolutely nailed like the lyrics in that song. It's like I don't know however many words, I don't know the exact count of words in the song, but to tell that story of that magnitude in that little of words, he's a genius.
yeah, no,
He really is.
he is, man. What do you think your fans connect with the Day to Remember the most? Like, what about your music do you feel like they connect with the most?
I think that it's very relatable, and I think that Jeremy writes the lyrics from a perspective that you can kind of link any um you can kind of make any of our songs fit your life too. Like they're very personal for him, and they're from a place where he's writing about personal experiences and things that he's gone through. But he does it in a way to where he it almost sounds like it's written for you. Like, and I find things in our music that, like, I mean, I wasn't a part of that situation you're talking about, but it absolutely relates to my life too. And I can get on stage and totally, like, I can sing those lyrics too, and it makes sense to my life.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people that listen to our band, they're able to do that and kind of make these situations and these songs make sense in their own personal life and what they're going through. Uh, and I think that he does that very well. I think that that's a big reason why a lot of people like what we're doing. I also think that we're just regular people. We're not any different from when we started, and a lot of times whenever you kind of come into some success in this industry, people it changes people, and I
Yeah.
can understand why. But we haven't left where we've grown up, and we're still here doing what we've always done. I think people relate to that, and um they have those same dreams and aspirations, and they see that we've done that, and they see that it's not been a negative thing on our life, and they kind of hope to achieve the same thing.
Oh, for sure, man. I think you see it in any industry. Like, you've been one of the most humble dudes. Like, I like from the moment we shook hands. Like, you've been super, super down to earth. But like, I've seen it with people that like YouTubers. You know, like I mean, they hit like 100,000, a million subscribers, whatever, and like as soon as they do that, like their mentality changes. You can tell like they're judging you differently. They're thinking about you differently. So you know, it's super awesome to hear that. It's like you guys are the same people. You just really love what you do.
Yeah.
Do you remember like a time like when you were a kid, like how you would like either with Blink 182, can you remember how you related to their music, like what that did for your personal life?
Yeah, I'm Blink 182 especially. Um, the reason I have them tattooed on my hands, and everyone's like, "Why do you have that band tattooed?" Because they're like such jokesters or whatever, you know. And it's like for me, their music was an escape from my life. Like when I was growing up, my parents got divorced, and it was like really tough for me to deal with, and kind of moving into a new household with my stepfather, and kind of coming into this being a man and growing up in this environment that was constantly changing. Like I could go to their music and skateboarding and guitar and escape and just kind of like find my own place and like find my own thing. And so with them, they were all about making jokes and making light of really dark situations. Like Stay Together for the Kids is about divorce
Mm-hmm.
specifically,
Right.
and that could be on the same album as the song where they say all the cuss words, and whatever, or the party song,
Or they
or
sing about aliens.
yeah, exactly. And and that's kind of like that was a big influence on me, and they never took themselves too seriously. Like they could do these things where they were talking about very serious subjects and very intense things, and then on the flip side make jokes about themselves and talk about dicks and farts and whatever. And I just love that. I'm like, and they're doing it as friends. Like
Hmm.
they seemed like the best friends, and they that's all that mattered was the band, music, joking around, and having a good time. And so that shaped me as a person. Like I'm always making jokes, always trying to make light of these heavy situations and dark situations or whatever, and then not letting that be too serious,
Right.
and how you deal with that, and then moving forward, moving on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like loving what you do. I mean, it's the only way to sustain this passion. Because I mean, if you always try to be serious and you're not having fun with it, eventually you burn out. Am I
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you guys like they remember have a lot like a really healthy relationship with each other. I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys have a good time like being around each other. So that's awesome.
Communication is everything. Being able to talk to your friends about hard situations um, is everything. It it's what saved our band from breaking up many times. Is like we've had those hard conversations, and those conversations are never as hard as what it's like to have to not have that person in your life anymore, or to not have the band around anymore. Like it's always easier to have those hard conversations and communicate when it feels like you shouldn't or you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a relationship as well, right? It's just the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Communication is the number one thing, and if you can't like tell the other person how you're feeling, how you expect to be with them for a lifetime,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Just like your man.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Let's wrap this up. I think we've been going for like what over an hour now. So
Didn't even realize it.
yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah, like I said, I thought this would be a great conversation. So many topics we've covered. You guys just released a new music video a
Yeah.
little while ago, Resentment.
Yeah.
Super stoked about it. And one thing I want to say about that, like, there's a lot of CGI and special effects, but like, it doesn't come off as cheesy. Like, it was so well made, and the
Yeah.
lighting and everything. Was that in a green room, by the way? Like, how did you?
Uh, Half of it was, and then half of it was actually filmed in California, where they were actually dealing with a lot of wildfires.
Gotcha.
We had to we had to go and alert the fire department because we were using a lot of smoke and stuff like that, and so that the fire department didn't come
Right.
to where we were because we were filming in a forest. So half of the stuff that looks like we're filming in a forest, we were actually in a forest. Um, and it's a lot of smoke and stuff like that. And the way that the guy that did his name is Jeb Hardwick, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He did a lot of the Architects music videos and a lot of like a lot of I think the only ones that I really know of is the Architect stuff, but he makes videos look expensive, but he does it for a pretty good deal.
That's awesome.
And so he's found some way to kind of edit and do all that stuff himself. He does all the CG and all that stuff. Um, and half of it was green screen, and half of it was us actually out in the forest playing and stuff.
That's cool. Why the fire theme? Like,
So that song "Resentment" is about the emotion of resentment. It's kind of like paranoia. It's kind of like once the feeling of resentment comes on, it comes on like a wildfire. And so that's what the lyrics are about in the chorus, especially. And so it's like once it happens, it takes over, it's consuming. It's like, and how the song's about how you deal with that and how it affects you. And we thought that the showing that the wildfire is a perfect representation of that emotion, and how it happens. And like in the video, you kind of see like he's like floating up, and from hearing him explain it, and I don't want to butcher his explanation, but you know, you it happens in those situations where you have to lift yourself out of the situation, or else it's going to consume you. But then sometimes you can't control it, and there's a part in the music video where he gets hit with this beam, and that's the feeling of resentment like taking over, and then everything kind of catches on fire and it burns everything down. And the feeling of resentment, it hurts more than just you. It affects everyone around you. It affects the other person in the situation that you feel that feeling towards, like. And it goes back to communication, where you got to dissolve those things and you got to fix them as they're happening, or else it leads to this thing that will burn down everyone around you, and it affects everything. And that's kind of what the message is.
yeah, beautiful. I mean, absolutely. I think we all probably have dealt with some sort of resentment, and it's not a good feeling. And like you said, it can just consume you and completely take over.
Right.
So such a great story on that part, and the music video definitely nailed it.
Yeah.
Um, what are you most stoked about this new album coming out?
It's it's uh it's the newest attempt at it's the most current attempt, including all of our current influences and inspirations at making music, at being artists and being artistic and working together and creating something new. And I think that that's one of the things, like as an artist, that you constantly want to do is like you play songs and you'll have, like when we did Bad Vibrations, we went to Colorado and all were in a room and wrote it together and recorded it like old school. We worked with Bill and Jason from the Blasting Room. Bill was in the Descendants. He's like a classic punk band, and we kind of did it that way, and it was super raw, very real in that sense of capturing the emotion in that way. And then this one, we did it very contemporary. We did it here at the Audio Compound in Orlando. We brought this guy Colin Britton in, and he is known for like incorporating synths and new recording techniques and like all these different things that we didn't use last record. And then it's like the complete opposite. We're pushing in all these different directions and we're using all these different influence and these different sound sources, but we're still using the formula of A Day to Remember, and we're still writing music from our perspective, but it's influenced by so many new things. So I'm really excited for people to hear it because it's like it's still us, but it's like us 2020.
Right.
It's like whereas the last album was like us kind of being nostalgic and like doing things like we always wanted to do them, and how in a big studio with a big console and getting the big mixer to do it. And then now it's like doing it the new way where sometimes this song was like when Resentment was mixed by Dan Lancaster, who mixed a lot of the new Bring Me the Horizon stuff, and he just uses a computer with two monitors to mix, and that's it.
Wow.
And sometimes it's on headphones, sometimes whatever. And we're using all these new techniques and all these new things, and trying to push the boundary and sound design and all that kind of stuff. So it's scary and interesting and exciting. I'm just excited for people to get it and hear it. And
I'm looking forward to it, man. Your
yeah,
guys' progression has been, I would describe it as very smooth. Like bands will like draw a clear line of like, I'm changing our style, like all, synth, we're adding all this to like what would have been like raw, like amp stuff before. You guys has been very, very smooth. I could still hear a Day to Remember back from like the first album. You know what I mean?
we've
I love
always
that.
we've always kind of had those things in there, like, and it's just been very well hidden. Like even if you listen back to like in Homesick, there's like all kinds of like sound design stuff in there and synths, but it's just hidden. It's kind of like tucked in. And then What Separates Me From You, same thing. And then Common Courtesy, we pushed the boundary a little bit more. And then with Bad Vibrations, we kind of just reeled it back and kind
Hmm.
of went more raw. And then now this one, it's like everything's on the table. We kind of did all of that. We kind of took things from Bad Vibrations where we're using real amps and kind of miking them up and manipulating them and using pedals and all that stuff, and then using synths and taking that and then manipulating that even more, and then kind of combining the two, and then running
Right.
guitars through all. It's crazy.
That's
It's cool. It's really
Oh,
cool.
for sure, for sure. And like, you guys collaborated with Marshmello too. Rescue Me is like, oh man, you guys like nailed it with that too. And obviously that's a different spin because they're bringing what they, do to the table.
Yeah.
How's working with Marshmello? I'm afraid to say he or she because I don't. But
Oh, he's rad.
have
Yeah.
have you seen his face by the way? I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right on, dude.
Yeah.
That's such a great song. I've shared it with like literally everybody.
No, that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's rad. He kind of grew up. He grew up. He's a little bit younger than we are. He grew up listening to this genre, and he's a huge fan of like punk and metal and all that kind of stuff, as well as EDM. Obviously, like that's what his main passion is. But he gets it. He knows the influences. He knows what we would be trying to do, and he's just great. He's great at melody. He
Yeah.
is that's like his main thing, and that works with us, like because I think that we can I think that we're lucky enough to be able to do anything we want. Like we've opened that door. Like we have acoustic songs, we have electronic stuff, we have heavy stuff, we have punk stuff, we have rock stuff, whatever.
Right.
And because it's so eclectic, we can do all of those things and it's not weird.
Right.
And that's what we want to do. We want to have rappers on our stuff. We want to
Yeah.
have like we tried to get Rick Ross on our album before and
Nice.
he said we were Satanists, so he didn't do it. But
Oof.
we're not Satanists, but yeah, I don't know. That's a big thing is like we're influenced by all these things and it is huge. The array goes the spectrum is like very
Right.
far stretching. So um that you'll never know what we're gonna do next. That's
I
the
mean,
coolest part about a day to remember.
I mean, you guys have to be one of the most badass bands to like cover a Kelly Clarkson song. I mean, that's freaking amazing.
I mean, that song's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Her
dude.
version's good.
Her version's good, but like you guys definitely catered it towards like my personal like liking as well. So that was awesome.
Thank you.
I want to ask you: is there a like a release date yet for the new album? Has
No,
that been
not
in the
yet.
talks?
Soon, very soon. Um, we're finishing it up right now. We're kind of nailing down the final art concept for the full packaging and all that stuff. Just got off a call yesterday, so very soon. Um, we have a couple more songs that need to have the final mix done, and other than that, it's like we're 98% there. It's like,
Dude.
and you know how like when you're waiting for something on your computer to load and you get to like that 98%
Yes.
mark and it's like 1 minute remaining and
Right.
that 1 minute remaining is like 20 minutes.
Oh, it's the whole thing.
It's where we're at.
That's where you're at.
Mhm.
All right, man. Well, I look forward to it. I cannot wait for that album to drop. Any final thoughts? I guess that we haven't touched on anything you wanted to share before we close this out.
No, I think we talked about a bunch of cool stuff. So
We talked about a lot of cool stuff. So,
yeah.
Dude, where can people find you? You got like a MySpace or?
Yeah, my Instagram is Neil Westfall 44. Snapchat NW44, Twitter NW44.
There's that 44 again.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff, man. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Neil. I really appreciate your time, dude. And
Thank you.
good luck on tour.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
All right, we did it.
Cool.
Awesome, dude.